I know this might sound petty, but I need to say it out loud. I raised my son on my own for 20 years. Not a weekend dad, not split custody, just me. I wiped every tear, covered every bill, stayed up through every fever, and showed up to every single parent-teacher night. So when I watched him walk his stepmom down the aisle at his wedding, while I sat in the third row like some distant aunt, something in me cracked. Hi, everyone. I hope you're having a peaceful day wherever you are. I'm sharing this not because I want sympathy, but because maybe someone out there needs to hear it. Maybe you're a parent who sacrificed everything and still ended up sidelined. Maybe you're a child who doesn't know the full picture. Either way, I hope this story helps you see something more clearly. My name's Deborah. I'm 62 now, retired from nursing after almost 4 decades. I live in a little duplex outside Kansas City. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. My husband, Greg, died young. Callum, our son, was 8 at the time. I never remarried. I didn't have the time, the money, or the energy. I just showed up, day after day, even when he stopped talking to me for a week because I bought the wrong brand of cereal. Even when he punched a hole in the wall over a late bedtime. I never gave up on him. Ever. When Callum turned 16, Greg had already been gone 5 years. That was when Cynthia came in. She was Greg's ex before me. Yes, ex-girlfriend turned sudden widow turned apparently a substitute mother. She started showing up at school events, taking Callum for lunches to talk about his dad, buying him gadgets I couldn't afford. I didn't think much of it at first. He was grieving. Maybe she missed Greg too. But then the letters stopped arriving. Birthday cards I mailed were returned unopened. He canceled on Thanksgiving last minute. I blamed college stress. By the time he graduated, I hadn't seen him in nearly 2 years. And then came the wedding. I wasn't even told until Emily, his fiancée, sent me a polite invitation, as if I were an old coworker. The envelope didn't even say Mom. It was typed. I swallowed my pride, booked a dress I couldn't afford, got my hair done. I told myself I was going for him. The ceremony was in this modern barn-style venue in the hills. Very Pinteresty. When the music started, I stood instinctively, expecting Callum to come out alone or with Emily. Instead, he emerged arm in arm with Cynthia. He kissed her cheek before taking his place. I saw Emily's mom tear up. Cynthia waved at the crowd. Nobody looked at me. I sat down slowly, like the air had thickened. There was a moment, during their vows, where I caught Callum's eye. He looked right through me. After the ceremony, I waited near the reception tent. I thought maybe I'd get a minute. Maybe he'd hug me. Maybe he'd say, "I know it's been weird, Mom, but thank you for coming." Instead, Cynthia walked up, drink in hand, lipstick too perfect, and smiled. She leaned in close, and I swear this is what she said, verbatim. "You always made things harder than they had to be. I just made it easier for him to let go." I couldn't move. My hand gripped my purse so tight I tore the strap. I wanted to scream, to slap her, to find Callum and drag him out of that tent by the collar. But I didn't. I walked back to my car. I cried once I got home, not loud or dramatic. Just quietly, like something inside had collapsed. And then, 5 days later, a small package showed up on my doorstep. No note. Just my name, handwritten in the blocky style Callum used as a boy. Inside was a soft blue handkerchief. The same one I had embroidered for him in first grade, with a little stitched rocket ship in the corner. I'd tucked it into his backpack every day before school. Wrapped around it was a card. Not from Callum, from Cynthia. "He said this doesn't suit his new life. I thought you'd want it back." I just stood there in my kitchen, holding that handkerchief like it might start bleeding in my hands. That was the moment I realized. This wasn't just a phase. This was engineered, and I was done sitting still. I didn't sleep that night. I left the package on the kitchen table, just sitting there like a wound that wouldn't close. I kept glancing at it, expecting it to vanish. But it stayed. That tiny blue handkerchief from Callum's childhood wrapped in Cynthia's smug little note, felt heavier than it should have. I must have read her words 20 times. He said this doesn't suit his new life. What does that even mean? A piece of his past doesn't suit him now that it came from me? By sunrise, I wasn't sad anymore. I was pissed. It hit me that I'd spent 2 decades doing all the hard parts. Potty training, dentist appointments, panic attacks before science fairs. And she swoops in with her Botox and backyard brunches and walks my son down the aisle like she's the one who raised him? I wasn't going to be polite about this anymore. I pulled out the old storage bin I keep under the guest bed. That's where I'd shoved away the letters Greg sent during our separation, back when he was still figuring himself out. Some were kind, some were cruel. But I remembered one detail standing out. In his final year, Greg told me he had updated his will, and he promised, word for word, "You'll always be protected, even if we're not under the same roof." That was a long time ago, and after he passed, I never saw any version of that will. Cynthia handled the estate. She said everything was straightforward and there was nothing to dispute. At the time, I believed her. I was grieving. I didn't want drama. But now, I needed to know if she had lied. I called an old friend of mine, Erica, who works at a legal doc review firm in St. Louis. I hadn't spoken to her in a few years, but when I explained the situation, she didn't hesitate. "Send me whatever you've got," she said. I dug through every drawer, every file folder, and finally found a faded photocopy of a will Greg had emailed me a few weeks before he died. The date was 6 months before his final version. And in that one, I was listed as co-executor alongside Callum, not Cynthia. I sent the scan to Erica. The next morning, she called. "Deb, something's not right. The version filed with probate doesn't match yours. Cynthia's listed as sole executor, and some of the phrasing has been altered." My stomach dropped. "You're saying it might have been changed?" "I'm saying I've seen enough fraud to know when something smells off. And this? Smells." I hung up the phone with my hand shaking. The years started replaying in my head like a bad movie. Callum's sudden distance. The returned birthday cards. The weird legal silence after Greg passed. All of it lined up. And still there was this part of me that clung to hope. Maybe Callum didn't know. Maybe he'd just been pulled along by a woman who knew how to play the long game. I didn't want to believe my own son was part of it. Until that Sunday. I was at the farmer's market just trying to feel normal for 5 minutes when I saw Emily. Alone. Standing at a honey booth with a cart full of greens and flowers. She looked tired, not like a newlywed. I almost didn't say anything, but I walked over. She smiled politely. "Deborah, hi. I didn't expect to see you here." "I didn't expect to see that handkerchief come back in the mail either," I said. I wasn't trying to be cruel. I just didn't have the energy to pretend anymore. Her smile dropped. That wasn't from me." My heart skipped. "Cynthia sent it, with a note. Said Callum didn't want it anymore." Emily froze, then blinked hard like she was trying not to cry. "Deborah, Callum doesn't even know she sent it." I just stared at her. "She's been forwarding mail without telling him," she said. "She even intercepts some of his packages when they're sent to their house. He's been trying to reach out. He thought maybe you were ignoring him." My whole body went cold. "And the wedding?" I asked. Emily looked around, lowered her voice. "Cynthia paid for most of it. She told Callum it would mean a lot to her if he walked her down the aisle. Said it was what his dad would have wanted." I couldn't speak. Not right away. Everything I thought I knew tilted. And then she said something that made the blood drain from my face. "She's been keeping something else from him. I don't know what, but I saw her shred a document last month. An old legal file with your name on it." I left the market with my ears ringing. That night, I went home, dug out my copy of the will again, and stared at it for a long time. If Cynthia was lying to me and lying to Callum, then maybe, just maybe, my son wasn't the one who betrayed me. Maybe we were both just pieces in her game. But if that was true, then the game was about to end. I didn't even know where to begin. That night after the farmer's market, I sat at the kitchen table with all the lights off, just the dim glow of the microwave clock blinking in the background. The house was silent. Too silent, and it wasn't peaceful. More like hollow. I held that stupid little blue handkerchief in my lap like it could answer something. Like it could undo everything I had convinced myself to believe these past few years. Turns out, Cynthia wasn't just a controlling stepmom. She was a manipulator in the truest sense of the word. And Callum? My son? He was stuck in the middle. But now I wasn't sure if I should be angry at him or just heartbroken for how much he never knew. I started going through old boxes again. Photos, old emails I had printed, cards I never sent. One from Callum's 10th birthday still had frosting smudged on it. I found an old voicemail I'd saved from when he was 12. His voice so small, telling me he loved the lunch I packed. I hadn't listened to it in years. When I pressed play, I didn't cry. I just sat there, numb, letting it run on repeat until my phone battery died. The next day, I called Erica again. I told her what Amelie said. About the shredded documents. About Cynthia forwarding mail without Callum knowing. She paused, then said one thing that stuck with me. If that will was altered, Deb, and if your name was deliberately removed, that's fraud. And depending on what was done with the assets, it could be bigger than you think. That word, fraud, echoed in my head. Louder than grief, louder than betrayal. Fraud. It wasn't just emotional anymore. It was criminal. I asked Erica what I'd need to prove it. She said, the original will. Or someone who saw it before it changed. I thought back to Greg's old attorney, Mr. Landon. He was long retired, but I remembered he used to leave little notes in his envelopes. Always in fountain pen, always meticulous. I still had one tucked in the back of an old cookbook, believe it or not. I found it, and with it, a number scrawled in the corner. Probably disconnected, I thought. But I dialed anyway. To my shock, someone answered. His daughter. She told me Mr. Landon passed 2 years ago, but her voice perked. She'd been slowly digitizing his records for archiving. When I gave her my name, there was a long pause. Then she said, actually, I remember seeing that name. You were in one of his unfiled but significant folders. I can take a look and call you back. I waited for 2 hours before she called again. I found something, she said. It's an email chain between your husband and my dad, dated 6 months before he passed. Your name was included in the executor appointment. The attachment's a draft of the will with your initials in the margin. I couldn't speak. Want me to email it? Yes, I said quietly. Please. When the file arrived, I opened it and stared at the screen like it was glowing too bright. There it was. Clear as day. Greg's signature. My name, and a paragraph that had been completely wiped from the version Cynthia submitted to probate. I felt something tighten in my chest. Not sadness, not rage, just weight. Years of being erased, quietly and cleanly, the way you delete a file and empty the trash bin. I wasn't supposed to find this. I wasn't supposed to matter. And then, as if on cue, my phone buzzed. It was Callum, just his name. After all these months. My hand hovered over the screen. I finally picked up. Hey, I said. His voice was low. I found something, he said. In one of Cynthia's storage boxes, it was labeled Miscellaneous Legal. He paused. There's a file in there. It has your name, and Dad's signature, and, I whispered. His voice cracked. It's not the will I saw. I closed my eyes. I know. I found it too. Silence. He breathed into the phone, shaky. She lied to both of us, he said. And then came the twist. She didn't just alter the will, Mom. She's been using it to take money out of a trust. Monthly. I felt the blood drain from my face. How much? I asked. Callum swallowed. Over 100 grand. So far. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. That was money Greg left for Callum. For his future. And she'd bled it dry while turning my son against me. She said you walked away. He whispered. I couldn't even answer. I need to fix this, he said, but I don't know where to start. I looked at the glowing file on my screen. The fraud, the trail, the lies. I knew exactly where to start. I've always believed the most dangerous kind of betrayal isn't loud. It's the quiet kind. The kind that wears pearls and says things like, I just want what's best for the family. That's the kind that poisons slowly. The kind Cynthia specialized in. After that call with Callum, I didn't wait. I printed everything. The draft will with my name on it. The email chain with Greg's old lawyer. A copy of the trust documents Callum had found in her storage box. I laid them out on my kitchen table like puzzle pieces and just stared at them. 20 years of being erased, one little lie at a time. And now? I was done being quiet. I called Erica first. She walked me through the next steps. How to challenge the trust withdrawals. How to freeze the account before Cynthia could move anything else. She recommended a financial investigator. A woman named Camille, former IRS, sharp as hell. Camille met me at a diner off Route 19. She wore aviators indoors and called everyone kid. I liked her immediately. Looks like your girl's been dipping monthly, Camille said, flipping through the printouts, transferring from the trust into a side account labeled family discretionary. Pretty name for theft. I told her I didn't want to go public. Not yet. I just wanted to corner Cynthia in a way she couldn't wiggle out of. Camille smirked. Then let's bait the mouse. That weekend, I hosted brunch. Nothing fancy, just enough for MLA to come over with Callum. I told them I had something I needed to show them both. I made banana bread and set out mismatched mugs. Callum looked nervous. Emily held his hand under the table. I started slow. Told them everything I knew. Everything I'd found. The forgery, the hidden withdrawals, the way Cynthia had isolated him from me over the years, piece by piece. Callum didn't interrupt. He just kept blinking, like trying to hold back 20 years of weight in his throat. When I was done, I slid a folder across the table. Inside was a letter Greg had written, dated 3 weeks before his stroke. It said, if anything ever happens to me, Deb should be protected. She's the one who raised our son. She never deserved the things I said. I want her to know I see it now. Callum read it twice. Then he just broke. He didn't cry loud, just folded in on himself. Amelie wrapped an arm around his shoulders and I let them sit with it. Then came the moment. I looked him in the eye and said, if you want to walk away from her, I'll back you. But if you want justice, I'll stand beside you. He nodded. And just like that, the roles shifted. For the first time, my son wasn't someone I was protecting. He was someone standing with me. We filed a formal complaint the next morning. Camille helped fast-track it. By the end of the week, the bank froze Cynthia's access. When she tried to log in, she triggered a flag. She called Callum that night, screaming. He put her on speaker. You ungrateful brat, she hissed. I took care of you. No, he said calmly. You groomed me to hate my own mother and stole from both of us. You think she's innocent? Cynthia snapped. She left your father when he was sick. That stopped me cold. What? I said out loud, not even meaning to. Cynthia's voice crackled. You think she's some saint? She walked out on Greg 3 months before he died. She just couldn't take the mess. Callum looked at me, confused. Is that true? I stared at the phone like it had grown teeth. My mouth opened, then shut. That's not what happened, I said finally. My voice shook. Greg asked me to leave. He didn't want me to watch him die. He said it was easier that way. Cynthia laughed through the line. That's not what he told me. My chest went cold, not just from the words, but the way she said them. So sure. So smug. Callum's face shifted. He stood, walked to the sink, and braced his hands on the edge. Then he turned back to me. "Mom," he said, "there's something I didn't tell you." I waited. When I was going through her file drawer, I found another envelope. It wasn't labeled, just tucked in between receipts. I opened it. He looked down, then met my eyes. "It's a paternity test." Everything in me stilled. "What?" His voice cracked. "It says, Greg might not be my biological father." I couldn't breathe. "Is it true?" he asked. I didn't answer, because I didn't know which lie had just been exposed and which one I'd buried too deep to remember. I didn't answer right away. When Callum told me about the paternity test, it felt like someone had pulled the floor out from under me. My first instinct was to deny it, to say, "That's ridiculous," or "Your dad would never do that." But the truth sat heavier than I expected. I looked at my son, really looked at him, not as the baby I raised or the man I almost lost, but as a person who'd just had his entire sense of identity shaken. And the worst part? I had no idea what to say. I finally spoke. "Greg and we had a rough stretch. After his first heart attack, we weren't good. I never cheated, but there was someone I confided in. Someone who helped me feel seen when Greg shut down. I never thought it went far enough to matter. But maybe it did." Callum's eyes dropped to the floor. His jaw tightened. I could see him trying to piece his childhood back together in his head, like he was looking for something that still made sense. "I didn't know about the test," I said softly. "Greg never told me. But if he had doubts and he stayed, then that says something too." We sat there in silence for a long time. The kind of silence that fills your ears, heavy and close. I thought maybe this was it, that this would be the crack too wide to fix. But then Callum stood up and walked toward me. And he hugged me. Tight, like a kid again. "I don't care whose blood is in me," he said. "You're my mother. You've always been my mother. No one gets to rewrite that." I cried for the first time in years, not from pain, but from something that felt dangerously close to healing. We took Cynthia to court 2 months later. Camille helped us gather everything: withdrawal logs, financial records, even handwriting analysis showing her edits on Greg's will. She'd forged my name on the revocation documents and funneled over $130,000 from Callum's trust into shell accounts. It wasn't a dramatic trial. No courtroom shouting, just quiet, steady dismantling. Cynthia showed up in a beige suit, still trying to look composed, but you could see it cracking around the edges. When the judge asked if she had anything to say, she tried to spin it as misunderstandings and family conflicts. Said I was bitter, that I was trying to pit Callum against her. But Callum stood and said only one thing. She convinced me my mother didn't love me. For money. That silence afterward hit harder than any gavel ever could. She lost everything. The judge ordered restitution. Her accounts were frozen, and the DA opened a separate fraud investigation. Amelie filed for a protective order when they found out Cynthia had also opened a credit card in Callum's name 3 years earlier. That part was news to all of us. Her reputation, which she valued more than anything, unraveled publicly. The neighborhood Facebook groups lit up. Friends she'd bragged to about saving the family started pulling away. She moved out of state within weeks. Callum stayed. We're not perfect. There are still days when the past creeps in around the edges. But now, when we talk, it's real. No more pretending. No more wondering. Just 2 people trying to find a way forward through all the wreckage. Closure didn't come wrapped in a ribbon. It came slowly, with grit and quiet choices. And justice? It wasn't about watching Cynthia fall. It was about finally being seen after years of being erased. If I've learned anything, it's this. Silence is not the same thing as peace. And sometimes the real revenge is simply living without shame. If you've ever been through something like this, or you're still carrying someone else's version of your story, I hope you'll share it in the comments. Maybe we'll understand each other a little better. And if my story meant something to you, feel free to subscribe. I'll be here, telling the truth I should have told years ago. Quiet, maybe, but never invisible again.